PowerPoint for Chapter 11 of our textbook, Property Victimization, Identity Theft, and Cyber Victimization. So first we're going to start with property victimization. There's several types of property victimization that are measured using the National Crime Victimization Survey. These include theft, motor vehicle theft, burglary, and trespassing. So these are all non-violent crimes. For the NIBRS, which is FBI data, all of the above are included, plus they include a few other offenses as well, such as fraud, computer crimes, and robbery. You have to note here that robbery is usually considered a violent crime, but NIBRS counts it in their property crime. Okay, theft in the NCVS. Theft is also called larceny or larceny theft, and this is basically when an item is taken. It cannot be taken by force, violence, or fraud. It includes shoplifting, stealing bikes, pickpocketing, etc., etc. Very, very common offense. The 2020 rate is 90 per 1,000, so like I said, very, very common. However, it did decline from 2019 to 2020, as we know a lot of crimes did. And there are still about 12 million larceny thefts in 2020, so a common offense. So theft in NIBRS, the definition is the unlawful taking away of property from the possession of another entity, and there's 8 different larceny theft offenses, and these include pickpocketing, purse snatching, shoplifting, theft from building, theft from coin op, theft from motor vehicle, theft of motor vehicle parts, and other larceny. So there's just under 4 million larceny thefts in 2020. So if we compare this, such as the FBI data of 4 million thefts compared to the victimization survey data, which is not necessarily reported to the police, we can see that a lot of theft is underreported. So most, people do not usually report small thefts to the police. Obviously, if you're getting burglarized, you probably would. But if someone steals something, maybe, you figure that you're not going to get your item back anyways, or it's not important. So very, very underreported crime. However, most motor vehicle thefts are reported. Like we said, you need to report your car being stolen to the police in order to collect on insurance money. There's a very low recovery rate of stolen property. Again, maybe it's that it's not seen as super important. NCVS reporting rates of burglary dropped dramatically from 51% in 2019 to 44% in 2020, so less people reporting burglary. Other theft was slightly more reported in 2020 compared to 2019. Okay, so some household risk factors, those that are headed by young people, household incomes of less than $15,000 or 6 or more people living in a house. These are the houses that are most likely to be burglarized. Again, routine activities. If you're around risky people, they might steal from you. Production developments as well. So small, compact items are easy to steal, and often, they're worth a lot of money. So an iPhone, it's tiny, it's easy to steal. It's, everybody has one. They're expensive. They're up to, I think about $1,000 compared to a house phone that, I haven't bought a house phone in a very long time, but maybe like $20 or $30. They're big and bulky. You wouldn't really break into someone's house in order to steal their house phone. So production development make these items smaller and more expensive, and therefore they're a more attractive target to steal. Okay, so motor vehicle theft. This includes just your vehicle getting stolen itself. It doesn't include someone breaking into your vehicle and say stealing something in your trunk, or stealing, the change in your glove box. And this does not include carjacking. So carjacking is a violent crime rather than a motor vehicle theft. This is when the offender is armed and the vehicle is occupied. So often they'll, pull the owner of the car out and get in and drive it away. This is considered a violent crime, and it is also considered a federal crime. It is not counted as a motor vehicle theft. Again, there's a small dark figure. You need to report your vehicle being stolen in order to collect on insurance. It is very costly, about $6.4 billion annually, and the average loss is about $8,800 per incident. So about a fifth of those people reported missing a day of work, so they're not able to get to work the day that their car is stolen. Okay, so motor vehicle theft is one of the offenses that did increase during COVID in both the NIBRS and the NCVS. It increased at a greater rate for NIBRS rather than NCVS, and it's the greatest rates in a decade. This is probably due to the pandemic, people having economic problems and decreased monitoring. Maybe, their cars parked out in their driveway and people are inside, but not really, going outside because everyone was on lockdown. So that could potentially be why there was more motor vehicle thefts in 2020 than 2019. Okay, so some risk factors for motor vehicle theft. One might think that, very rare, valuable cars would be the ones that are targeted the most. However, this is not true. It's the popular, super, super common cars that are the ones that are targeted. So these ones are easy parts to sell. If they don't have a VIN number in the window, they're, an even greater target. Car thieves don't want to hold on to the car for very long. They're not looking to steal these, valuable cars and keep them. They want to steal them. They want to, strip down all the parts and sell off the parts. This is easiest to do if you're stealing something like an F-150 or a Honda Civic, something that's super, super common. You're going to be able to sell the parts a lot easier. Usually this occurs at home at night. If you're parked in your driveway on the street rather than in your garage, you're more likely to get your car stolen. And then household risk factors, those residents that belong to a racial minority, that are younger, under the age of 34, those that rent their home rather than own their home, and those that make $7,500 a year or less. So responses to motor vehicle theft has a very, very low clearance rate. So only about 14% of these are cleared by the police. Generally what happens is someone gets their car stolen, it's insured, insurance pays for it, buys you another car, and then it's kind of, okay, whatever. So it's not something that is, going to be I'm not going to say not investigated by the police, but it's not something that is cleared very often. Maybe police wouldn't spend as much time on it than they are other types of crimes. So the Motor Vehicle Theft Law Enforcement Act of 1984, it required the car manufacturers to mark their parts with an ID number, so stolen parts are easier to track. The Anti-Car Theft Act of 1992, this is what made carjacking a federal crime, and they linked state departments together to make it harder to title stolen vehicles. So it wasn't that you could steal a vehicle in one state, drive to the next state and get a title. The act in 1992 made it so that all these title offices are connected and you could see whether or not the car was stolen. So local programs are funded through registration costs when you have to, renew your registration for what is it, a couple $100 every year. It pays for some of these prevention programs. Target hardening is something that everyone can do in order to prevent car thieves. So locking your car, alarms, although alarms are not seen as, super effective because we're all kind of desensitized to the sound of a car alarm going off. So maybe not the best way. But the steering wheel clubs are still, you don't see them being used as much anymore, but they still are pretty effective at deterring car thieves. Tracking devices are very, very popular now. You can get a tracking device right on your phone so you can see, where your car is at all times. So these acts of target hardening make it more difficult for somebody to steal your car. Okay, so the next crime that we're going to talk about is burglary. This is unlawful entry of a structure to commit a felony or theft. So we have to compare this to robbery, where it is a violent crime and people are targeted, people are injured. But burglary is not. The intent is not to harm people. It's solely to commit a theft or maybe another sort of felony, maybe some sort of property damage as well. So there's two different types, forcible entry. So this is when you break a window, pick a lock, or unlawful entry. So it's maybe you see, oh, I know that this person never locks their doors, so I know that they're going to not be at home. I'm going to go wander around and snoop and, maybe steal something if I see something that I want. Okay, so burglary is something that's a little bit more reported than your simple larceny theft like shoplifting. About 1.2 million for the victimization survey in 2020 and about 900K for NIBRS. So you'll see here that there's a huge decrease in burglary it's been decreasing for the past 10 years or so, but decreased even more between 2019 and 2020. So this is due to people being at home. If someone is at home during the day in their house, they're much, much, much less likely to be burglarized. Again, burglars don't want to harm people, they just want to steal. So if they know that someone's going to be home, they're probably not going to break into the house. Total property loss, it's not insignificant. It was still about $3 billion in 2019. Okay, so household risk factors for being burglarized. So houses with children, female-headed households, income of less than $15,000, a young person as head of the household as well. Routine activities is really the best explanation. It's a good explanation for lots of different crimes. Houses that lack guardianship, so those that, don't lock their doors, that don't have a Ring doorbell, they're the ones that are going to get broken into. Having a large dog at home has been found to deter burglars as well. So victimization surveys show that low houses in low incomes have higher victimization rates. However, when interviews are done with active burglars, so the ones that are breaking into the houses, they say that they tend to target middle and high income areas as well. So there's kind of, a discrepancy there. The quiet residential streets are the ones that are more at risk. The super busy streets with lots of people on them all the time, less likely to get burglarized. Routine activities, there's guardianship. If there's people all around, even if it's not people that own the house, they'll be less likely to break into them. And of course, gated communities have lower victimization risks. Again, they're being watched, usually by people, either security guards, there's fences, it's harder to get into there, so it's going to be less likely to be burglarized. Okay, so the next property crime that we're going to talk about is arson. So this is something that is not as common as things like burglary and larceny theft. So NIBRS includes arson as a property crime. UCR, though we don't use UCR anymore. The Crime Victimization Survey does not include arson as a property crime. So the UCR definition, I believe this is a NIBRS definition as well. Any willful or malicious burning or attempting to burn with or without intent to defraud a dwelling house, public building, motor vehicle or aircraft, personal property of another. So like I said, not a very common crime. This was from the UCR, 10.9 per 100K. So for adults, most arsons are set for financial reasons. So it's their business is not doing well, they need some money, they're going to set their house or their business on fire in order to collect insurance money. This is by far the most common reason. Some arsons are also set in order to hide evidence for another crime. So sometimes you'll see sort of a murder arson where someone kills somebody and then sets the structure on fire in order to get rid of evidence. So it's a very common crime for those under the age of 18. About half of arsons are committed by people under the age of 18. But for adolescents, they're not the ones, collecting on insurance policies. So usually they're just due to anger and due to sort of a fascination with fire. Lots of kids start fires. It's just something that angry kids tend to do. But usually most people tend to grow out of this. There's, of course, still the ones that don't, but usually it's something that they grow out of. There's a low clearance rate for arson. A lot of the time it's hard to figure out who did it. But your typical arsonist is usually white. They're usually male. A lot of times they have a low IQ, but some have been found to have like a very high IQ as well. Okay, so this is sort of a, I guess, infamous or well-known arsonist. His name was John Pillow Pyro Orr. He worked as a firefighter and arson investigator, and he would set fires when he was on shift and then put them out. So the people he was working with noticed that there was a disproportionate number of fires that happened while he was on shift compared to not on shift. And, they did a little investigation and figured out that he was the one that was starting all these fires and then putting them out, probably to, feel like a hero and have, people congratulate him and everything. So he set over 2,000 fires and they caused $10 million in damage. And one of the fires got completely out of control and it ended up killing 4 people. So he's right now serving time in prison for arson and murder. Okay, so along with property crime, we need to talk a little bit about fraud as well. So the NIBR's definition of fraud is deceit to induce or an entity to part with something of value or to surrender a legal right. So this is basically stealing from somebody using deceit or tricking them. National Crime Victimization definition: intentionally and knowingly deceiving a victim by misrepresenting, concealing, or omitting facts about promised goods, services, or other benefits and consequences that are non-existent, unnecessary, never intended to be provided, or deliberately distorted for the purpose of monetary gain. So there's many, many, many different types of fraud, and new types of fraud are popping up again and again. So this is credit card or ATM fraud, impersonation, welfare fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, employment fraud, phantom debt collection, relationship and trust fraud. So many, many, many different types. So very, very, very common crime. 1.25% of Americans reported being victim of fraud. And that's in 2017, and it's actually thought to it be increased more recently. So loss is about $3.2 billion in 2017. We measure it using the National Crime Victimization Survey, Supplemental Fraud Survey. Only about 14% are reported to police, so very, very, very underreported. A lot of people are deceived and don't know that they've been deceived. A lot are embarrassed. A lot, maybe they didn't really get very much money, so they just won't bother. So very, very, very underreported crime. This does not include identity theft. So identity theft is doesn't include deception. So for fraud, it must be knowingly and intentionally deceived. So many, many, many types of fraud. Social media scams are very common and becoming even more common. Seems like there's a new social media scam out there every day. Back when I made these slides, it was around Easter, and the scam of the day was this Cadbury Easter basket scam on WhatsApp. So they said, oh, you want a Cadbury Easter basket, just give me your personal information and we'll send you this Easter basket. But really it was a way of, stealing someone's information and committing an act of fraud. Since the Ukraine war started, there's been an uptick in scams, tricking people to donating to fake causes, very, very common. This little picture here is Texas Roadhouse. Again, this is a scam that when I was making these slides was popping up on my Facebook, and some of my Facebook friends were, falling for it. So people made a fake Texas Roadhouse Facebook page, and they said they're going to give a coupon for 4 steaks to everyone who shares the post or whatever. And then it led you to a page where you're supposed to enter all your personal information in order to get this coupon. So I'm assuming they're able to trick. I haven't seen it on Facebook in a while, but I'm assuming they were able to, deceive and trick some people that thought they were getting a free steak dinner. So romance scams, another type of scam that's very popular, very common, and increasing every single year, it seems like. This is financial fraud over social media or dating apps. So apps like Tinder and Bumble and Facebook pages, Instagram pages, and it's a romance scam. Someone, pretending to want a romantic relationship. Often they say, oh, they're traveling outside the US. And my bank account was frozen and I need a couple $100 for a plane ticket to get home, et cetera, et cetera. It's very costly. In 2020, victims of romance scams lost $304 million, which is a 50% increase from 2019. So you see, this is one of those crimes that's increasing. The average person loses $2,500. And then those over the age of 70 get scammed for even more, and they lose about $7,000. This is lumped into confidence scam category for the FBI, which costs about $600 million in 2020. This includes a grandparent scam as well. It's a scam done by people pretending to be the grandchildren in need of money and will go after elderly people. Okay, so the next type of property crime is identity theft. So this is when you steal someone's personal identifying information in order to commit fraud. So you're not directly tricking someone or deceiving them into giving you information, but you're going and taking that information. So this is often used to access bank accounts or open new bank accounts, open new lines of credit, open new credit cards with this sort of information. And again, it's very fast growing, very common today. Made much, much, much easier with computers. This is considered a federal offense as well. Oftentimes they're going to take over your existing account, so they'll hijack your account, or else they might, watch you enter your information, shoulder surfing in order to open new accounts under your name. Okay, so these are a couple ways that people will try to steal your identity. So skimmers. These are placed on ATMs in order to make sort of copies of your credit cards that are able to be used. There's also these sort of fake pin pads that are around, and same thing, it will make a copy of your credit card and then collect your PIN number. So they'll record your PIN number in order to make another card in order to use it. And this is a phishing website. So phishing is using fake emails or websites. I'm sure that all of your spam folders on your Gmail is all full of phishing emails. They're very, very, very common. Oftentimes they'll look legit. So this one looks like it's from Amazon, but then when you look at the address, it's accounts at Amazon instead of Amazon. So it's a fake email account. Usually these will provide links that you're supposed to click and enter your information, and then your information gets stolen that way. Spear phishing is another type of phishing where the person targeted in a phishing scam uses their personal information to make it seem more legit. So maybe they'll say, oh, so-and-so, you shopped at this particular store, please enter this information for whatever, special coupon or something like that. So they know a little bit about you or your maybe online habits before they send out the phishing email. Vishing, this is phishing over the phone, and then smishing is phishing over text. So very common, lots of different ways to do this. Whaling, targeting an employee by pretending to be a senior employee. Okay, so the FTC keeps track of identity fraud and other consumer fraud. And like I said, this is increasing. So 2019, between 2019 and 27, increased 45%. So huge jump. So we talked a little bit before about how, burglary and other types of theft seem to decrease during the pandemic. It appears that the same amount of theft is going on. It just switched from sort of in-person theft, I guess you could say, to these online theft using computers and stealing identity and fraud. So people are still getting things stolen from them, but instead of maybe physical things or their house getting broken into, they're getting their information stolen instead. So stimulus payments were a very, very popular way of committing fraud in 2020. And they were used, the information, to open new credit card accounts. So very, very common crime that was committed during the pandemic lockdowns. So we don't really know the extent of this. A lot of people don't know they're victims of identity theft. And a lot of people don't necessarily have a lot of money stolen from them. So we do measure it by the NCVS in the identity theft supplement. Again, we're not really too sure how much of it goes on. We know it's a lot, but we're not too sure of the exact percentage because so many people don't even know that they have been victims. So those that do know they're victims is about 9% of Americans. So huge, huge, huge number of people that have been victim, and obviously higher for those that don't know. Very, very costly. Losses total over about $15 billion. So only about 25% of victims know where or how their identity was stolen. Most people just don't know. And this is one of the crime types that most people don't know. There's no relationship between the offender and victim. So we know that most violent crimes are not random, and the victim and offender know each other. For identity theft, more than likely, the offender and victim have no personal relationship. Very, very, very underreported. Only about 7% reported it to the police. Again, a lot of people don't know, or if they do know, maybe they didn't really steal anything, so it was not seen as important. However, most people do notify their credit card company. Okay, so about 2/3 of victims report direct financial losses, and about 5% report indirect financial losses. So either this is lawyer fees, or maybe they have bounced check fees or overdraft fees. About 8% reported that the experience was severely distressing, and about 6% spent more than 6 months clearing the problem it caused. So very, very difficult to get your identity back once it gets stolen. So some of the responses to identity theft: the new Fair and Accurate Credit Transaction Act of 2003. So this basically makes it victims' information more secure, reporting by credit bureaus, fraud alerts as well, make it easier to receive records from creditors. The CAN-SPAM Act of 2003 made it a federal crime to send spam emails. I don't know that that is very effective because I certainly receive a lot. Increased sentences for identity theft. Again, I don't think that this is necessarily deterring a lot of people because most people that steal identity are not caught. It's kind of one of those crimes that can happen all over the world. You can be victimized by so many different people that it's very, very, very difficult to actually prosecute someone for identity theft. Prevention, the best sort of prevention we have is just being aware and keeping your information as safe as you can. You know, don't give your personal info over email. Don't give out your social security number. Don't let people know your passwords. Cover your PIN number when you're inputting it in the PIN pad. Just stuff like that is probably, the best way of preventing identity theft. Okay. So cyber victimization, we've talked about a number of different crimes that involve computers and online. So this is just using an online environment to harm others. So smartphones, computers, iPads, even Xbox, etc. And most of these are financial, but it could also be cyberbullying, which we talked about a little bit when we talked about school. Sexual and dating violence as well, romantic scams, cyber stalking, and revenge porn. So one of the crimes we're going to be talking about is revenge porn. So this is distributing sexually graphic images of somebody without their consent. So somebody sends a picture to someone intended just for them, and either they distribute it, or maybe their computer, their email gets hacked, and someone else distributes it from there. In Texas, it's a felony charge called unlawful promotion of intimate visual material. It's pretty common. About 12% of adult social media users have been victim or threatened with revenge porn. And it's very, very, very hard to remove images from the internet once they're out there. The consequences can be long lasting. Anyone can, Google you and see those pictures. So it's very, very, very distressing for victims of revenge porn. Again, it's very, very hard to prosecute because it can be in any jurisdiction. It's not like it's necessarily, your next door neighbor. Once, something's on the internet, anyone can use it how they like. It's been common among, actresses and actors and musicians. Jennifer Lawrence was one of the victims. Her private pictures that she sent to somebody were distributed over the internet. So a similar crime is sextortion. So this is demanding money or sexual favors with threats of making explicit images public. So very similar to revenge porn. It involves threatening to do something though. A well-known case of the Midwest Boys case. So there was 115 teenage boys who were victim of sextortion. They were discovered through, their school websites for their sports, for, their hockey teams or football teams. And over Facebook, they thought they had met a modeling scout that wanted to pay them. They said they were, you're really good looking. Do you want to do some modeling? We'll, give you $1,000. So I said, oh, yeah, sure. And they asked for nude images in order to, see if they're going to make it as a model. And these boys were, young teenagers, so they maybe thought it was weird, but didn't really know how the industry worked. So they ended up sending nude pictures to this person that was sextorting them. They're extorted into performing sex acts by the offender, or if not, he released all their pictures onto Facebook. So he did this to 115 different teenage boys before he was arrested and charged. But consequences, are long lasting, they're severe, and 2 of his victims ended up committing suicide. So the last thing we're going to talk about is technology-based coercive control, also called cyberstalking, another crime that is on the rise. It's a type of intimate partner violence and involves intimidation, isolation, and control of the victim using technology. So this is stalking someone using their phone, using their social media, etc., their computer. It's one of those crimes that are growing because it's been made easier by all the different technology that we have these days. And about 0.4% of people reported being a victim of cyber stalking. So about a third of teenagers surveyed reported having a boyfriend or girlfriend who checked up on them more than 10 times a day. So this is one of those things, where do we draw the line? Is this, just being in a close relationship, or is this a form of technology-based coercive control? So definitely something that we need to, pay a little bit attention to, because it seems like this is one of those crimes that's just going to be more common with the improvements of technology.